Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Caderna podcast. I'm your host, Brian Caderna. So this week we'll be featuring another outstanding guest in George Holmes. Now, if you remember from the past couple of episodes in which I introduced some of the talking points from my upcoming edition of Millennial Millionaire, you'll recall much of the economic insights I have are influenced by the extreme population growth as well as technological advancements and the merging of the two. Now, George Holmes fits right into this conversation as he is the chairman and CEO of Resonant, one of the premier companies in designing 5G RF filters and modules. They're essentially the microscopic pieces within your phone that make seemingly unlimited data flow possible. Previously, George served as the chief commercial officer of Tigo Energy and several other senior executive positions within the tech space. He holds a BA from the University of Puget and a diploma in international business from Nyenrode University, hopefully I'm saying that correctly, in the Netherlands. Our wide-ranging discussion not only addresses the latest gadgetry and what almost sounds sci-fi, but also delves into George's leadership advice at the helm of a blossoming publicly traded company. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, George Holmes.
Is going to require work and time and sweat and toil.
If money wasn't an issue, what would I be doing?
Don't worry about it. You'll figure it out.
Change is the only constant.
The Caderna Podcast.
Hey, Brian, thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. And where are you dialing in from? You got a really nice background there.
I'm calling you from Austin, Texas.
Okay,
So
Austin.
Yeah, what you're seeing in the background is Town Lake, going straight up the lake, facing west. So
okay.
It's a great part of the world. It happens to be where our corporate headquarters are today, but we have a large development facility in Goleta, California, which is just north of Santa Barbara, as well as in Burlingame, California as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, it seems like if you're in business or anything tech related, you got to be in California and now Austin. That's quite a migration from California to Austin, I might add.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, everybody's coming here now. They found it's one of the best kept secrets. It's a great town, great people. Probably the best thing going for it is a great business environment.
Yeah, I bet. Is it starting to change? Like, do you notice kind of the dynamic there of the population and the character of Austin changing at all?
Well, it's interesting. Downtown Austin is just getting very, very busy. I mean, obviously, over the last 10 years since I've been here, it's continued to see pretty tremendous population growth. Last year has had an influx of people coming from all parts of the world, in particular from California, just trying to get away from, everything that has been going on in different parts of the world. But good news is Texas is a great place to be, and it's a great environment and lots of great stuff to do outdoors. And, it's a great technical environment too. We've got the University of Texas at Austin here that is a great place to draw from. And then we've got, great universities all over Texas as well.
Definitely. And some good barbecue, I might add.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yep. Yes, sir. So can you tell us a little bit about Resonant? I know being the CEO of a big company like this certainly takes up quite a bit of time. If you want to just maybe give our listeners kind of a cliff notes of what this company does.
Yeah, I'll give you the cliff notes, but I'd also tell you, while we are a public company, we are a microcap. The company is a public venture-based startup, started in 2012. Went public in 2014 and really started early revenues about 2 years ago. So we're in that growth phase that all startups go through. And where we find ourselves today is we're in a great position, which we'll get a chance to talk a little more detail about here this afternoon. But, as we sit back and look at what the company is and what the company is doing, we are an RF filter manufacturer or designer. And we design filters for the largest filter manufacturers in the world and transfer those designs to them so that they can in turn fabricate them and sell them to the handset manufacturers. So you might ask, what's a filter? Filters are those tiny physical devices that separate the frequencies coming into your phone or your mobile device. So when you sit back and think about all the different signals coming into your phone, whether it be GPS signals, Wi-Fi signals, all the different cellular signals, the Bluetooth signals coming into your phone, how you separate those and keep those from colliding with one another is with filters. They're the little RF fences that allow these signals to get to your phone uninterrupted.
And now when we say filter, because these things are so inside of an iPhone, like so microscopic, is it an actual physical filter or is it a software program per se that's doing the work?
No, it's actual physical device about the size of a grain of sand. And if you think about your iPhone, the first iPhone in 2007 had, less than 10 filters in it. Today, the current iPhone has about 100 filters in it. And that just is, largely driven by the fact that in the early days, not a lot of data going into your device. Where today, there's a lot of things happening. I mean, if you think about all the different things that you do on your phone today, were pretty much unimaginable back in 2007, just, a little over 14 years ago. It's pretty exciting to see what's happening, and it's only going to get more, as we sit back and look at things like virtual or near virtual reality being done on their phone, downloading videos in less than 30 seconds. Today, when you're standing at the airport hoping to get that video downloaded before you get on the airplane, it could be 20 to 30 minutes to download a high def video. And those things are all going to change as the networks continue to evolve and technology continues to get better.
It is just incredible. And it's all happening so fast. It's almost hard to take a grasp of. And so these filters, like it's regulating the data that comes in that'll be used for the GPS or for the YouTube video or things of that nature. How do they kind of kick into action? Is it which app you have open or what device you're clicking on that triggers it? Can you give us maybe like in layman's terms how they actually operate?
Well, it's a hardware device, right? So it's always there, always doing its job. It's depending on whether or not it's being actively used or not, depending on the applications that you're using, depending on, where you're at, throughout the country. If you're in a location that only has 2G cellular service, you're not using your 5G filters. You're using 2G filters. If you're in an area that's got 4G LTE but does not have 5G, you'll be using 4G LTE devices, filters that are within the phone. But, the key thing, and I guess the thing that kind of makes it more tangible for users, because these things are microscopic devices, right? So it's hard to kind of get your hands around what these things actually do. Best example for you is, we've all been using the phone, our cell phones, when they've gotten hot, when we've been talking on them, right? You talk on a phone on a 20-minute phone call and the phone gets hot and you're like, wow, that's unusual. What's happening with my phone? Well, what's happening with your phone is the RF front end, which the filter is an integral component of, is working harder than it needs to. So what's happening is you're probably not getting good filtering. You're getting a lot of overlap. The power amplifier that actually drives the signals out of the phone is working harder. It's the PA that is actually getting hot. And when the PA gets hot, that usually means your filters aren't working well. And what happens is not only does your phone get hot, but your battery life goes down. And you see that that's a real degradation in performance. Another example of when a filter might not be working well is when you're getting crackling on your phone. It doesn't happen very often today, but it happened quite a bit, 10 years ago. I mean, the whole notion of can you hear me now for the different television commercials is all about, are you getting a good signal? Well, part of getting a good signal is rejecting those signals you don't want. And the rejecting of signals you don't want is what a filter does.
It's interesting. And now we talk about these different generations, I guess. So that's what the 1G, the 2G, the 3G, and now we're up to 5G, correct?
Yes.
That's the latest and greatest. So what exactly, how have these evolved? Like what is happening that we've gone through these various generations, and when does it end? Like where exactly are we headed with all this development?
Well, that's a great question. And, there's no end in sight, right? They're already talking about in the standards body 6G. It's just like, as we look at what's happening on the Wi-Fi front, we're talking about Wi-Fi 5, we're talking about Wi-Fi 6 and Wi-Fi 6E. As the demand for data continues to increase, we're kind of overly thirsty for driving, excessive amounts of data into our mobile devices. They're going to continue to see these new generations of technology get implemented on our phones. Part of the thing that we look at is these different standards, as it were, that came out, whether it be 2G, as you described, 3G, 4G, 4G LTE, 5G. Each of these technologies has a very long life cycle, which is why you see mobile devices today having legacy technologies, so they are backward and forward compatible. Typical life cycles are 10 to 15 years for these technologies as they get deployed. So, as you have, you went out and bought the brand new 5G iPhone or the brand new 5G Galaxy phone, those things have backward compatible technologies in them, mainly because you're going to be working in different areas throughout the US, throughout the world, that may or may not have those different technologies available to you as a mobile phone user. So you might be in part of the world that doesn't have 5G. You might still go to places that don't have 4G. Hence the requirement to have all of these technologies in the phone, which ultimately drives the complexity in the RF front end, which increases the number of filters in these devices.
Now, one of the things that just came to mind, and I appreciate you kind of giving this summary to a technology novice, like myself. I remember when I did a marathon in Washington, D.C., I had my phone on me and I had a whole playlist ready to go that was going to carry me through the marathon. And as soon as the gun went off and I hit play, it was like my phone froze and we couldn't get any data. And I wasn't able to listen to anything on, I believe it was Pandora at the time that I was listening to. Why does that happen when you're in a massive crowd like that? Does that tie into this, 4G, 5G and these filters when you have just such a crowd of people all trying to use data?
You know what? That's a great question, and it's a great example. Probably a better example for today's 5G than it is for some of the legacy technologies. I mean, clearly it happened with 4G and 3G as the new technology were rolled out. If you had a latest and greatest phone that was trying to communicate on kind of one of the cutting edge transmission technologies, and there was an overpopulation, as it were, in a specific location, you could have congestion, which would have potentially caused the situation that you described. That is probably more likely to be happening today in different 5G environments, just because there's not a massive rollout of the technology yet. I mean, the operators are all scrambling, as you've seen on their different television commercials, to get a footprint out there in the marketplace with their 5G platform. T-Mobile is out in front. Verizon's got a great platform, depending on what part of the country you're in. AT&T's got their footprint. T-Mobile is, with the coming together, T-Mobile and Sprint's got this vast footprint out there. And so depending on where you are, you might have very good coverage, you might not have very good coverage. And depending on what type of coverage you have and what type of network you're trying to get, the service you're trying to get onto your device could be hampered by congestion. The more people in that area that are trying to get access to that same technology. Really complicated though. Lots of things that could cause that, not the least of which is, you were wrong place at the wrong time trying to do things that the network wouldn't support. Hard to tell, but definitely something that could have been contributed to by the new technologies that you were trying to leverage.
Sure. And it's funny because this kind of ties in a little bit, perhaps, and you could correct me if I'm wrong here. But one of the big chapters, I should say, that's leading into my next book, which is a second version of Millennial Millionaire, talks a lot about population and just frankly how crowded the planet is getting so quickly over the past several decades and certainly the last century. Is there a capacity of some sorts for all of these laptops, cell phones, smartphones, everything under the sun that's kind of interconnected on these networks? Or can we just keep on getting better and better and keep up with it?
It's a great question, Brian. And there's a lot of dynamics that go into that question. I'm sure you'll be exploring a lot of different avenues in your book. There's a lot of people that have a lot of opinions in this area. But I would tell you from a technology and a technology congestion perspective, there's a reason that we're moving up in frequency is to open up more frequency bands and to create a greater opportunity for a wider pipe coming to your mobile device. Clearly, there's a tremendous amount of congestion below 3 gigahertz, but now we're going 3 to 5, 3 to 7 gigahertz with the 5G implementations. We're seeing Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 6E, in the mid 7s. It's all about opening up big, unfettered chunks of spectrum so that we can deliver more data to you as a mobile user. And these technologies are continuing to evolve. Clearly, the rejection channel to channel, which is what a filter does, is kind of maintain the integrity of the data pipe coming to you and into your mobile device. As you're trying to reject the adjacent channels, trying to reject the adjacent congestion, can cause issues. But, as spectrum opens up, the pipes get wider, there's a greater opportunity to push more data to an individual user.
Wow. It's just incredible. And so is there any physical aspect to this as we talk about, going on the different gigahertz, I believe you said, is there any physical aspect to it, or this is just all kind of stuff that you can't see, you can't touch? It's just there. And we're on these, radio frequencies that are it sounds like they're almost unlimited.
Well, I wouldn't say, completely unlimited, because there's the fundamental capabilities of the technologies that we have today. I mean, if you step back, 10 years ago and said you wanted to have good RF filtering at north of 3 gigahertz, guys would have said, well, there aren't any technologies that are available that will do that today. Yet now we find ourselves 10 years later, and there are technologies that are available that allow you to create some great filtering in these higher frequencies that'll allow you to get lots of users in a very congested area and not have the congestion that you described earlier when you're out doing your race, and which means that you're going to get great data throughput to your mobile device. As you sit back and looking at RF is kind of this, kind of fuzzy thing that, as we're pushing data over the airways. But as technologies continue to evolve, we're going to get greater access to higher frequencies that allow us to push more data. The higher frequencies at shorter distances, but there's things like millimeter wave that puts, kind of more terminals out there such that you can get, a greater distribution of these frequencies into more localized areas. So lots of technology evolution that's happening. And we as consumers are going to figure out how to take advantage of it. There are some of the Uber apps that are going to be developed over the next, 5, 10, 15 years, some of which haven't even been thought about today, that we'll all probably use in our everyday lives when the time comes. I mean, if you think about in 2007, what you were thinking about doing with your phone probably was just making a phone call, maybe sending a text.
Yep.
You surely weren't thinking of using it as your mobile computer like many people do today. So lots of things have happened as the technologies have evolved.
Without a doubt. And that's what I wanted to ask. And we'll come back to all this for sure. But it sounds like both you and I started in business, went to school for business. And now I'm talking about, investments and economics. And you're talking about things as small as a grain of sand that are blocking data and all this stuff that I can't even completely understand. How did you get to where you're at right now? And how did you get into this field in particular?
Hey, that's a really good question, Brian. And I wish I could tell you it was a direct line. It wasn't. I was a finance guy when I came out of school. My first job was in finance. I was an operational controller for a telecom equipment company in the Bay Area, and right place at the right time, given opportunities to do other things. I went from being a finance guy into operations, and then ultimately into sales and marketing. And just with the right place, right time, with the right people mentoring me and giving me, opportunities well beyond my capability, no doubt. But I have the opportunity to work with some really good people, and what that has allowed me to do over the last 30 years of my career is, kind of put me in a place where I am today. But literally, I would tell you, it's working hard, doing the best job I know how to do. I can tell you, I walk into every room knowing I'm not going to be the smartest guy in the room, but hopefully I can outwork everybody that's there so that I can keep up. And it's a work ethic that's provided a good path for me up to this point. And that, and the people that I've worked with just some fantastic people over the years that have done really fantastic things, whether it be from a technology perspective, where I had an opportunity to sell really exciting technologies, or just from the sheer fact that they mentored me well to allow me to do what I'm doing today.
That's great. And it's so true. I mean, the harder you work, the luckier you get, and things just kind of fall into place sometimes.
Yeah. There's something to be said for it's good to be lucky. Right.
Sure.
And, we obviously all want to think we make our own luck by working hard. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. But sometimes just being at the right place at the right time, where the right opportunities come together, and being able to seize the day when that happens.
Yep. Yeah. Well said. And so what's it like now being, at the helm of a publicly traded company? How does that feel? Like, can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing each day, how you're taking this company that's doing a lot of cutting edge stuff and, trying to get them, I guess, to the next level if you do want to get there and grow, or is it kind of stay small and focus on the quality of what you're doing?
Well, we're in a technology business, and obviously our goal is to, push this technology as far as we possibly can. We believe the technology we have for 5G is very, very unique. We talked a little bit earlier about, as frequencies go up, you get a lot broader access to these wide pipes that are not existent in the lower frequencies. We happen to have a technology that was designed and is ideally suited for that. So we believe we have a technology that could potentially be ubiquitous for 5G and high frequency Wi-Fi, and ultimately, ultra wideband, and then possibly even millimeter wave applications. And so our perspective and what we work on every day is just focusing on execution, right? We're a startup company. We're doing the right things. We spent a good part of the first 3 years after I joined the company honing our craft as it relates to how to create designs efficiently, how to push them out to a multitude of different foundries in this RF space, have companies be successful taking our designs and ultimately selling them into mobile handset manufacturers, and in some cases automobiles. We've had a level of success there with our early designs. I would tell you that the market was in transition when we started. As 3G and 4G became commoditized, we had to look, what were we going to do? Because it's hard to create enough designs on a licensing basis to outpace the market decline from an ASP perspective. And so we looked very diligently at ourselves and the things we were doing and looked at where the market was going. And we identified that we thought there was a major gap in the technologies that were going to be available for 5G. And we set out to design a RF filter technology that would work specifically in this arena. I would say that, it's through the perseverance and hard work of our, tremendous team of technologists that have allowed us to get to where we are. They created the opportunity for us to be at the right place in the right time with the right technology. And now it's our job to focus and execute so that we can deliver on the promise of what this technology can do into the marketplace. It's a big challenge. I would tell you today, for me, it's kind of stay out of the way of the technologists, allow them to do what they do. My job is to work with our investors, the marketplace, make sure people understand what it is that we're doing, why we're ideally suited for a segment of the marketplace that is rapidly growing, why we think we have the ability to get in and dominate this segment, and then work with our customers to help them as we move forward and expand our footprint in their ecosystem. And that's a lot of work. I work with our sales and marketing guys every day to make sure that happens. And that's kind of how I spend my time.
Got it. And that's kind of a good segue into what I wanted to ask you is all this technology that seems so advanced and fascinating. I assume there's a lot of reinvestment in research and development and things of that nature. But like you mentioned earlier, you really have a sales and a marketing background. How are you tying the two of those together? And I guess, who are you showcasing this to? Who are those customers that when you say execute, that you're trying to kind of execute this plan to?
Yeah, that's a great question, because as we sit back and look at our business, we are a licensing company, right? So we don't manufacture anything. We create designs, we license those designs to others who in turn build what we design and sell it to the OEMs. For us in the RF filter business, that means we're selling to filter manufacturers. There are 7 companies that represent 98% of the market in the RF filter market, with the top company being Nyenrode, and the kind of the next grouping is the Qorvos, the Skyworks, the Qualcomms, the Broadcoms of the world, and then followed closely thereafter by Tigo, Uden, and Weissel. Those are the top 7 companies in the space. We are very
top as far as design, like what you guys are doing, or they manufacture as well?
These are the companies that own the market. They own 98% of the market for RF filters into the mobile handset business. These are the companies that sell these products into that market. Approximately $15 billion market that guys are going after aggressively, growing to over $22 billion over the course of the next 5 years. So it's a big market, getting bigger. These are the big players in it. We're fortunate that our largest partner happens to be the largest player in the market. And they've got north of 30% market share, clearly the biggest guy in the group. And we're very, very lucky to have them as a customer. We have other customers in the tier 1 category, and we're working to expand that. I would be remiss as the CEO of a public company to say that, I really want our team to basically close deals with as many of the top 7 as possible, such that we can actually expand our business and expand our footprint beyond where we are today. So it's a challenge. It's one I think that we are well positioned to take advantage of. I don't think we'll get all 7, because clearly some of them have their own technologies that they think are as good as what it is that we're doing. But I think we have a really good shot at getting our unfair share of these companies as our customers. And then they in turn will get the mobile handset manufacturers as their customers, and so on.
Got it.
So it's a space we find ourselves in today. We've already shipped over 60 million units, or our customers have shipped over 60 million units with our technology. And sounds like a big number. It's actually a pretty small number when you think of the overall number of units sold into the mobile handset space, which is in the tens of billions of units a year. but it's a big number to us, and it's one that I think validates our ability to engage with the customer, do a design for them, have them in turn build it, and ultimately sell it to an OEM.
And what is a OEM?
OEM is the original equipment manufacturer. It's basically the Apples, the Samsungs, the different Chinese handset manufacturers, depending on which ones that you find in fancy today.
Okay. And that's what I wanted to ask too, is, you, like you said, you are a micro cap at this stage, granted publicly traded, and have some great things that you're designing. Is it something that you can kind of expand internally, or is this one of these situations that you see quite often where one of these customers or the next level up in the food chain will say, hey, we'll either do it internally ourselves, or we might just buy you and take you over? How does that kind of work within this field?
Yeah, it's a great question. And obviously, as I think most small startup CEOs would tell you, the best way to get acquired is to be focused on building your business and think about what it takes to build a good business. Because if you build a good business, then others will see value in what you're doing. And if what you have has value, someone else might want it. I think our sole focus today is to build and execute our business, grow our business, get to profitability, and build a great company. And I think we have the ability to do that. We have noted historically, we've got 4 devices under contract. It's roughly $9 million worth of revenue from the world's largest filter manufacturer. It takes 12 concurrent designs like that to get to cash flow break even. We think that there's an opportunity with our largest customer to do over $100 million annually with them in revenue. And that's for a company like ours that, currently, just approximately 28 million gets us to cash flow break even on a cash basis. So, lots of opportunity, pretty tremendous opportunity in front of us. That $100 million is with one single customer. I think from my perspective, that's the holy grail, is figuring out how to, execute, deliver, get more business, expand the business beyond the customers we have, and really build a solid business out there such that others will see it and go, whether or not it's something they want to buy or just be a partner with. That's kind of where our head's at, is more customers, the better. We're going to create great value for our shareholders, and that's going to be our number one focus.
Sure. Fair enough. And with the future of this kind of field growing, like you said, I mean, we're in 5G. Even actually, before I get to the next question, when will 6G begin? And what's that going to do to you guys in all these filters that have become so necessary?
Well, the nice thing about it is you go up with 5G to 6G, you're going up higher in frequency. Our technology is ideally suited for the higher frequencies. So we think that we have the ability to become, like Broadcom was to 4G. We think we have the ability that our technology, our XBAR technology, has the ability to have the same kind of market dominance in 5 and 6 and ultimately millimeter wave and the highest frequency applications. That's kind of where we see ourselves going forward. I think that we are ideally suited to deliver technology into that segment of the marketplace.
That's great. That's a good place to be in. And perhaps on the flip side, like, what are some of the challenges that you see, or do you have certain things that kind of keep you up at night as the CEO of a really, kind of, I don't want to say exploding company, but something that's really at that kind of tipping point of going to the next level?
Yeah, I think we are at that point of really having some breakout things happen, for sure. I mean, clearly we've had some tremendous milestones of validation of our technology. Last October was a massive validation point when, we had our largest customer agree with us that our technology was suitable for these applications, that it met the initial performance and reliability and packaging requirements, that they were now moving forward into the mass commercialization phase of the agreement with us. So clearly that's a great validation point. I think it created lots of opportunity for us with other customers as they saw they didn't have to be the first one to go in and validate the technology. The biggest player in the marketplace has already validated it. I think that's a tremendous place to be. But for me, the thing that keeps me up at night is time. Everything takes longer than I want it to, right? I mean, the big challenge is when you're doing really hard technical things, it just doesn't happen overnight. And we're a licensing company, so we're one step removed. I don't own my own fab. I don't have the costs associated with my own fab. I don't have the challenges associated with owning my own fab, but I also don't get the benefit of having my own fab either. If you have your own fab, you can walk downstairs and get your next version of a device built. We have to wait until we can buy time on somebody else's fab to get that done. So everything takes time. It doesn't happen as fast as you want it to. But good news is, as we've continued to deliver, from an execution standpoint, things have continued to get better over time.
Yep. Yeah. Speed sometimes seems like it's everything.
Yep.
And the going from 4G to 5G to 6G just kind of reinforces that idea.
Yep.
But one of the things I wanted to ask you as well is I had been watching 60 Minutes, I guess this was maybe 3 weeks ago or so, where the Fed chairman, Jerome Powell, was on. I don't know if you saw this. And he said the greatest threat right now to the US financial systems, kind of coming into my world of economics, is cyber. So with the things that you have going on, and I assume a lot of this kind of supply chain of everything that you're building and creating is international, of course. How do you guys address that? Do you have any exposure or any kind of role within this entire cybersecurity conversation?
Well, I think anybody who does business and transfers designs and does designs using the cloud has some level of risk. I would tell you that we spend a lot of time on the cybersecurity aspect of our business. It's top of mind. It's one of the things that our auditors review with us every quarter, every year. And it's something that we spend a lot of time and energy on. Fortunately, we are not at the forefront of the companies that have had issues with cyber attacks, but we're mindful of it. And it's something that we do the best job we know how and can afford to protect against those types of instances.
Yeah. And you mentioned that in some of your bio, you have experience in various IP strategies and things. How does that work as far as you guys come up with one of these designs that could be a game changer for the RF filters? How do you protect that, I guess? Is that something that somebody can easily kind of mimic or take a portion of your design and bring into their product?
Yeah, that's a great question. There is no direct line of sight for somebody to take one of our designs and take it and move it somewhere else and have it manufactured. Clearly, we're concerned about that. We keep an eye on everything that we do. We monitor our customers for their, making sure that they pay us for what we believe they owe us as it relates to designs they manufacture and take into production. The good news about our technology, it's fairly complex. It requires some very specialized tools to port these technologies from one foundry to another. And we own the tool base, so you can't buy these tools off the shelf. So be very, very hard, not impossible, but very, very hard to take one of our designs and port it and use it somewhere else.
Okay. So it sounds like a pretty secure position of sorts to be in.
Well, it's as secure as it can be, given the fact that we use cloud-based tools to leverage and create these designs for third parties. And, we do the best job we can to protect against these types of situations. You never say never, but I think we're in pretty good shape at this point.
Good. And kind of in a similar vein, I mean, how are the RF filters actually built? Like, what is the materials, I guess, if you can share that actually is used to make this tiny grain of sand that goes within the phone?
Well, the piezoelectrics that are used, we use a variety of different materials. Obviously, the ones that we talk about the most is lithium niobate based wafers that we get from the engineered substrate manufacturers today. That is kind of the cutting edge technology that we're using. It's a fairly standard technology in the balance of semiconductors and optical components. But for us, we're the ones using it to create a bulk acoustic structure, leveraging a surface acoustic wave manufacturing process. So the difference between those two manufacturing processes is just levels of complexity. Surface acoustic wave technologies are built on piezoelectrics that are typically 4 to 6 processes deep, so multiple layers building up 4 to 6 process steps, where a typical bulk acoustic wave structure is 12 to 14 process steps. When you sit back and look at kind of what's happening out there in the marketplace, we're fortunate to be in the right place with technology at kind of as new engineered substrates had became available, we came up with a design methodology and some IP around leveraging those engineered substrates into kind of these next generation RF filter technologies that we call XFAR.
Okay. And what I wanted to get to with that is you hear a lot now that all the talk is about these microchips and that there's a shortage of them, both for the computers, the cars that we drive, and so on and so forth. And kind of this ongoing debate of China and America and access to them. And do RF filters have anything to do with that type of raw material, I guess?
Well, supply chain issues are, abundant out there in the marketplace today. Obviously, we're seeing this kind of across the board. I would tell you for us specifically today, it has not been an issue. For our manufacturing supply chain, we have seen that some of our customers have been impacted. Not in what I would call a major way, but it's a broad-based industry problem right now.
And so what are you seeing kind of as like the future? I mean, obviously this is a show to everybody, but we do cater a little bit to millennials and the other young professionals out there. Anything that you might want to share with them as they're such tremendous users, and even the next generation, that's living on Snapchat and TikTok and all these things within their device that they're kind of so absorbed into. Any comments you have of kind of like where this is all headed? What's it going to look like 10 years from today?
I almost had to just say, no, nothing new. But it's interesting. We have an advisory board that we work with that is made up of some of the pillars in the industry. Everybody from the guy who ran RF engineering at Apple for the last 15 years to the chief technology officer at Skyworks, who's now the chief technology officer at Global Foundries, to the guy who ran the business unit for Qorvo, to the guy who ran the Wi-Fi Alliance for Broadcom, the guy who ran wireless business unit for Qualcomm. I mean, these are all guys who are kind of at the forefront of technology and where the market has been and where it's going. What I can tell you is there is so much new technology. I think that, as we sit back and look at, reminiscent of Mission Impossible movies and Bourne Identity movies and things of that nature, where we see, optics-based computer screens where you're just pulling things out of the air and working on virtual keyboards. I think that's going to be the reality. The question is how long is that going to be? I would have thought 5 years ago, that's probably not within my lifetime. It's probably, if it is, it would be at the end of my lifetime. I actually think today is probably we're 5 to 7 years out to start seeing that technology commercialized. I mean, commercialized. I think it's available today. I think that I'm currently aware of at least a couple of companies that are working on that technology today. And as they continue to do so, those technologies will be commercialized. And when they become readily available to us as consumers, I think it will be another wholesale change in the way we do things. I mean, I think you can imagine, I mean, who would have thought we'd been doing, the types of things we're doing gaming and virtual reality wise today with some of these large connected headsets. Those things will all get miniaturized. They'll all become, like your glasses that you're wearing with a small battery pack or something of that nature. I think the technology is going to continue to evolve, in a very fast way. We aren't really talking about the evolution of the cell phone as much as we were 10 years ago. We're now talking about all these other connected devices and how we're going to be going back to a situation where we're going to leveraging the cloud for processing power even more. I think it's going to be very, very interesting. We aren't going to be wanting for Christmas presents for the next 20 years, I don't think. I think the technology is going to continue to evolve. And as technologies continue to evolve, they're all going to be communicating wirelessly, which bodes well for companies like ours.
Yeah, I bet. And it's just, it's so cool. And it's also a little bit scary, on the other side of the coin. You read a book like Ready Player One that's in this whole virtual reality space that just seemed like kind of science fiction. And now it's almost becoming science nonfiction. And
I think virtual reality is here already, right?
Yeah.
It's all a function of, today it's all a function of the money you can spend to go leverage it. But I think over the course of the next 5 years, it's going to be very much part of our, everyday work life experience as these technologies continue to evolve. And, if you think about how that can impact you, right? I mean, it was interesting. We did a couple of videos, this past year to kind of help people understand kind of where the technology is and where it's going. And that was really because there was so much activity over the holidays and all the way through the Super Bowl on, 5G and what 5G is doing and where it's going. A lot of hype, and this goes back actually 18 months ago, right? I can think back at Christmas time, not this past Christmas, Christmas before, I was keenly worried that we might be too late because there was all this discussion about, a remote surgery. I mean, you saw great commercials on television over the holidays about, remote surgeries, people getting picked up by an ambulance and the paramedic has got pop-up screens coming up and they're doing remote diagnostics as you're driving into the hospital. That will happen. It's just not there yet. The technologies just aren't there yet to do this real-time, high definition communication that would be required to do, kind of that remote medical applications that we showed there. Same holds true for, we're all seeing this with autonomous vehicles, right? Autonomous vehicles require very low latency in the RF communication, between you and the next vehicle ahead of you, RF communication reflections off the stationary devices around you. Very low latency. Low latency is one of the things that's native in the application for 5G. We're not there yet. Where latency, which is the time it takes from the event to the time the subsequent event, those 2 periods of time, 10 seconds of latency is like 60 feet. I mean, that's a lot of distance if you're traveling at, 60 miles an hour and the vehicle ahead of you has stopped, right? So it's those things that are going to continue to get better, that are going to create a much richer consumer experience. And I think that's what we're going to see over time. I mean, today, autonomous driving is take my hands off the wheel while I've got adaptive cruise control. Well, that's going to continue to what we'd consider full autonomous driving over time, right? There's already autonomous vehicles out there being tested. As the technology continues to evolve, that's going to become more mainstream. As it becomes more mainstream, we'll all get more used to it, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I'm just thinking like the kids, are they going to be getting driver's licenses, or are they just going to learn how to work a computer and then they can go inside of it and go to where they need to be?
Exactly. I mean, there won't be, 20 years from now, it will be a trade craft, to get a driver's license.
I bet.
It's going to be all autonomous vehicles. You get in, you punch your number of where you're going, and you're going to be sitting in the passenger seat. Tradespeople will be the ones that are actually have gone to school to learn how to drive, because they will be the ones that are working in areas that can't use autonomous vehicles. I mean, that'd probably be where I'm at. So, that's something I have to look forward to.
Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable. And I know I've really kind of digressed into the technology side of things because I do find it fascinating, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners will too. But I just want to ask a couple questions, if I may, on the business side. Coming back to that, you mentioned that advisory board. Sounds like a ton of talent that you have on there. You're the CEO of Resonant. Can you tell us a little bit about your leadership style and how you sit down with these folks, all these, great minds, and how are you getting the most out of them, from the advisory board to your management staff? What's kind of, do you have some normal exercises or ways that you like to kind of walk people through, getting the most out of their day?
Oh my goodness. And life has changed over the last 18 months, right? So what we did before, you don't do now.
Yeah.
And hopefully we're getting back to more of the norm. But let's start with the advisory board, right? That is really all about having a crisp vision of where you want to go, right? And what we want to do with the company. And that comes from my team, obviously. But having a crisp vision for them so they have something very specific that they're trying to help us attain. And I think that's probably the biggest thing with them. I mean, obviously what we do with them, we have very regular meetings with this team of guys, and where we talk about, what the vision is, what we're doing technically to attain that vision, and then what we're doing and what help we need from them to help us close the gap between where we want to get to and where we are. And that's just, constant communication between us and them on where we're trying to get to versus where we are today. And so just having a very active dialogue. Fortunately, we have a good group of guys, and, it's interesting once you get guys, I mean, looking at their pedigrees, right, and their bios, you could easily be intimidated by this group of individuals. Well, they put their pants on one leg at a time like everyone else, and they solve problems like everyone else does. They have to understand what the problem is, understand what they have in their goodie bag to go address it, and then they're trying to figure out how to close the gap. And when you have that many smart guys sitting around the table, it just allows you to come up with much more, a greater breadth in the number of alternatives that you might have is if you only had one smart guy at the table, right? Yeah. So that's kind of how we leverage the advisory board is we leverage the fact that we've got 8 guys sitting around the table that are super smart and that we've clearly articulated where we're trying to get to versus where we are. And it's all about closing the gap. I wouldn't say that that's any different as we take it down one notch to my executive team. I would tell you, I believe that we have a very collaborative process where we identify where we're trying to get to, and then we work on it together to try to close that gap. We happen to get together now daily on Teams meetings like we're doing here, or it happens to be a Zoom meeting. But because we have to do that, because there's no longer are you walking around poking your head into somebody's office and chatting with them about what they're working on today and how can you help. We do that now via a daily Zoom call. And we do that every morning to just trying to make sure everybody's on the same page. So we're openly communicating on where we are, where we're going, what do we need, how can we leverage the gray matter in the room to kind of close the gaps that we might identify on a daily basis.
And one question off of that, because I know this is kind of a hot topic, especially as all the states are opening up, we're kind of returning back to some normalcy. Do you see like the things working just fine with kind of quote unquote popping your head in through a Zoom meeting? Or do you miss the days of actually being there in person? Like, have you seen any sort of gap in productivity or efficiency from your own staff, or have they just kind of kept on moving uninterrupted throughout this change?
I think that, for the most part, our team has worked very efficiently. in the remote environment, in large part because due to the lack of, a startup company in a facility that's got a lack of conference rooms, we had a lot of guys working on Teams and Zoom already because they were using virtual conference rooms. But I think what they got there versus what they get now is they got up to go get a coffee. They got up to go to the, restroom. They got up to go sit in the, in the cafeteria to have lunch. Those opportunities are now missed. Those opportunities to collaborate in an ad hoc collaboration environment. I think we missed that by not being in the office together.
I agree.
I'm a firm believer that, the whole notion of management by walking around is collaboration by walking around as well. I mean, I had this conversation with a young man that works for us. He caught me in the hallway. We happened to be in the office 2 weeks ago because we've been gradually getting back to the office on an ad hoc basis as we kind of move our way towards fully in the office. And he grabbed me and he goes, I'd really like to put forth my opinion that I think we should do this, on an individual basis, that some individuals should come into the office full time and some individuals should be able to decide not to come in full time. My response to him was this: thank you so much for your opinion. I really value it. It's a good thing I was walking around and you had the opportunity to share that with me. And I just stood there and looked at him, and he kind of the light bulb went off, and he goes, "Oh, I get it. I wouldn't have been able to have a conversation with you
exactly
about something that was meaningful to me if I hadn't been here." And I said, it's that kind of opportunity that I think that is missed. This happened to be something that was important to him, but stuff that's important to the company happens every single day just by people being in a position to collaborate. And I think that hurts. I don't know how to quantify how much it hurts, but I do think that it does disadvantage us as a group by not being able to do that.
That's a great point, because I even look back on my own career over the past 12 years, and some of the best aha moments I've had have been at different conferences and things where you finished and then afterwards you just go into the bar with, grab a drink with one of the folks that you met. And all of a sudden you're sharing ideas through conversation that you say, you know what, that would be perfect to put into my practice or into my business. And it's true, without those moments, you just don't kind of cross by that happenstance that you're not going to find it in an email. That's a great point.
You don't find it in an email, and you can't plan for that on a Teams call or a Zoom call. I mean, sure. We're having a Zoom call. This happens to be an interview, but if you and I were working together on something, we might have a Zoom call every day, but we're in and out on the Zoom call for the specific topic of what we're working on. Very rarely do you just pick up the phone and Zoom somebody to chew the fat because you're virtually walking by. And I think that's hard. And we had this discussion with our team about in October of last year. And we said, as the executive team, we want everybody to feel free, pick up the phone on any given day. If you just are thinking, hey, I got a free moment, I want to pick the phone and Zoom somebody, we'll all pick up the phone. It happened for about a week, a small number of pick up the phone Zoom calls, and then it stopped because out of sight, out of mind.
Correct.
Or if you're in the office, you get those regardless, just because you're walking past somebody.
Yep. Well, you know what, George? I mean, we might just be a few years away from when we can all just virtually walk around together, and then we can get those moments, even though we're 1,000 miles away.
Yeah, if some of these guys get what they're planning on, I think that will be the case. Yeah. But until that point in time, I think that in-person contact's a big deal.
Yeah, without a doubt. And if I could, I'd like to transition kind of in closing. Some of my listeners have found the greatest part of these interviews to be a bit of a lightning round that we do at the end. Just ask you some questions, get to know you a little bit better in your story. So if you're okay, if we could run through that for a couple minutes here.
Sure, fire away.
Awesome. So first up, what would be your favorite book?
My favorite book. Oh my goodness. That's a toughie. It would probably be one of the Tom Clancy books, because when I get out of doing emails, I tend to want to go into something that is not more adventure based and something that is less topical. I try to find reading material that is not going to challenge me mentally, because I'm doing that all the time, every day, trying to keep up with these, 60 some odd PhDs I have working for me.
Yeah, I bet. Well, you'll have to check out my latest book. Anarok is a fantasy novel, my first fiction book. So it's, and that's the reason why I went into fiction, is to find an escape during this whole pandemic. So,
oh, well, there you go.
Yep, add it to the list. And next up, what would be your favorite quote?
Oh, favorite quote. Sadly, it's one I got from somebody who was a mentor to me and really kind of leaned in on me when I was young in my career. And it was all about, it's the same one I use with the young people that I mentor today, which is, you're going to walk into a room. You're not always going to be the smartest guy in the room, but you can be the one that works hardest. And that has been kind of my temperament my whole career.
Got it. I like it. And this, of course, is a bit of a finance show. So I have to ask, what would you say is your best investment that you've made? It could be monetarily or otherwise, but your best investment.
Well, that's a great question, actually. And I think that I was having this discussion with a friend of mine last night as he ponders a new job. I think the best investment we can all make is the investment in ourselves, and to bet on yourselves to do what you set out to go do. And I look at kind of my career, and I've never taken the safe route. I've always bet on my ability to get in, execute, outperform, and then go do it again. And I think that's something that quite often people are afraid to take a risk. And I think that, probably the biggest bet we can make is the bet on ourselves.
Got it. And on the flip side of that, anything that you could point back to in your history, again, it sounds like you're comfortable to a certain extent with risk, would you say would be the worst investment that you've made?
Oh, goodness. Yeah. When I tried to retire the first time, I bought a home automation company in the town I was moving to. What I found is when you own a home automation company and you live in a small town, every party you go to, you become the technical expert for everything that happens in their home. That is a horrible idea. Because every party you go to, you're like, hey, come on over here. Can you help me with my remote control? And you're like, hold on a second. That's not my cup of tea. Ultimately, I lost my shorts in it. So I would tell you that was probably my worst investment.
Okay. All right. Thank you for sharing. And of course, you're a CEO of a very thriving company right now. So how much do you sleep at night?
Not enough. 4 hours, probably.
4 hours, really?
Yeah.
Okay. And another question.
You always wake up in the middle of the night, and I wake up at between 3 and 4 every morning, and then I'm immediately thinking about what we have to do today. So that's kind of my thing is I get up and, there's always something to work on.
Yep. There's always something on your mind. And last question here. Actually, we got two more. I'm sorry. But this is one that is all the craze right now that I found on some of my guests. Do you eat breakfast?
Eat breakfast. I usually have a bar of some sort.
Okay. Like a Nutri-Grain bar or something?
Yeah, exactly. It's, something because I grab and go. I mean, if I'm really lucky, I'll get to go over to Starbucks and, have a bar while I'm sitting having a cup of coffee, running into one of the guys that I work with. As you asked me earlier, I I'm living in Austin, but I also spend probably 3 weeks a month in Goleta. So I have an apartment there, and there's 3 or 4 guys in the apartment complex. We get up and we go to Starbucks, and if we're lucky, we're there at the same time. We sit and share a cup of coffee and have a bar together, and that's usually that's a real big breakfast for me.
Got it. Yeah, you'd be surprised doing a lot of these interviews how some of these high-powered folks, if you will, swear by getting the right amount of sleep and starting the day with a big breakfast. And then others just as successful that say, forget it, just trying to get into their day.
You know what? Here's a crazy thing. I have a very good friend of mine, very successful software salesperson. We had dinner with him last week, and he was talking about his breakfast at Champions. He goes and buys 3 boxes of donuts at the beginning of every week, and they last him all week long. And we're like, you eat how many cinnamon rolls? He goes, usually 1 or 2 in the morning. I said, so he's upgraded. Because last time we were at dinner with him, he was having Pop-Tarts in the morning. It's like he's gone from Pop-Tarts to cinnamon rolls. I'm like, I definitely missing something. I'd weigh 3,000 pounds if that were me.
And my last question here on the lightning round. So obviously you do a good bit of travel being the CEO of the company, and you studied abroad, which I did as well in Prague. Great experience. What would you say is your favorite location that you visited?
Oh, that's a great one. I am a big fan of the Dolder Forest outside of Zurich.
Okay. What is it called? The Zolder?
Dolder, Dolder. There's a great hotel there called the Dolder Grand, which is up in the top of the Dolder Forest, overlooking the city. It's just beautiful.
I'll have to keep that in mind. Well, thank you so much, George, for making time here and sharing a lot of your history and some insight for all of our listeners. As we close out here, any parting words that you'd like to share, any advice or anything else on your mind?
Hey, Brian, I really appreciate the opportunity to tell the story about Resonant, a little bit about my background. It's just always great to have the opportunity to do this. And I want to thank you very much for taking the time and sharing the time with me today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another episode of the Caderna podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Brian Caderna, and we'd have the pleasure to listen to George Holmes today. So please keep tuning in, and we will see you next week. Until next time, bye.
The Caderna podcast is for informational purposes only. Individual situations may vary, and the information should be relied upon only when coordinated with individual professional advice. Guardian and its subsidiaries do not provide tax, legal, Social Security, student loan, mortgage, or real estate advice. Listeners should contact their own tax, accounting, or legal advisors or the Social Security Department in this matter. All investments and investment strategies contain risk and may lose value. Brian Caderna is a registered representative and financial advisor of Park Avenue Securities, LLC, Pass, 300 Broadacres Drive, Suite 175, Bloomfield, New Jersey, 07003. Securities, product services, and advisory services are offered through Pass, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor. 973-244-4420. Financial representative, the Guardian Life Insurance Company of America, Guardian, New York, New York. Pass is an indirect, wholly owned subsidiary of Guardian. Caderna Financial Team and International Planning Alliance, LLC, are not affiliates or subsidiaries of Pass or Guardian. Caderna Financial Team is a division of International Planning Alliance, LLC, a general agency of Guardian. Pass is a member of FINRA, SIPC. California Insurance License Number OK04194. Content of the Caderna podcast is copyright of Brian M. Caderna, all rights reserved. Any redistribution or reproduction of part or all of the content in any form is prohibited without prior permission from the Caderna podcast. The views and opinions expressed herein may not be those of Guardian Life Insurance Company of America, Guardian, or any of its subsidiaries or affiliates. Guardian does not verify and does not guarantee the accuracy or completeness of the information or opinions presented herein. Any third-party materials referenced cannot be endorsed or verified by Guardian and are used as the opinion of the author. Guardian, its subsidiaries, or affiliates do not provide or issue or advise for mortgages. This material contains the current opinions of the author, but not necessarily those of Guardian or its subsidiaries, and such opinions are subject to change without notice.